Okay, it's Sunday, which means against my better judgment, it's time to go to Reddit and see what we can find in this hive of scum and villainy. First off, is Hanzo overpowered? Hanzo is a character that fires very fast projectiles that deal an incredible amount of damage, and tremendous amount of damage is what it actually says, and an unlimited clip size with a high rate of fire, which is only amplified by storm arrows, though they do less damage, without any sort of damage fall off, because he is a projectile hero. Hanzo also enjoys a decent mobility kit, wall climb and leap. It's called lunge, actually. Very nitpicky today. And the fact that he's compared to other similar DPS characters such as Widowmaker and McCree, less conspicuous and more quiet. Widowmaker leaves a distinct visible trail to her position every time she fires. McCree's boots are obnoxiously loud, making him super noticeable. I don't know about all this. I can usually pinpoint where Hanzo is pretty easily by which way the fucking arrow came from, or more frequently when I'm looking at the kill cam because he shot me when I came around the corner. You know? It's not usually that hard to find where he is after he's fired. The trick is being alive after he's fired a few times. He's also, compared to them, less vulnerable to dive characters since he can leap and wall climb away from them, making him the only character in the game where I can't think of any counters or weaknesses. His counters and weaknesses are dive heroes, though. Because if you get all up in his grill and don't give him any kind of space, then he doesn't have the time to land the correct shots at you and he just has to spam at you. And sometimes that works. Sometimes you're playing, I mean, we watched it, well, actually we didn't because the fucking footage got corrupted, but there's a video you're gonna see in the next couple days where we played Hanzo for a little bit, and we did some very questionable positioning, and flankers jumped on us, and we just happened to kill the people that jump on us. But, you know, you're rolling a dice on that one, because, I mean, if you're playing against, like, a good Genji as Hanzo, the Genjis should have your number. By all accounts, the Genji should absolutely have your number, but sometimes you will roll well on this dice, and you will shoot him in the head, and he will be very upset about it. But diving is any kind of, like, long-range, mid-range hero. The counter to them usually is get up in their fucking face and don't give them time to sit back and take shots at you. Because when you know, it's very easy to sit 1,000 miles away shooting at people, but as soon as the person is right on top of you trying to kill you, suddenly it gets a little bit more difficult, doesn't it? You know. Oh, I've got no problem playing Widowmaker when I'm up there completely uncontested and the enemy makes no attempt to threaten me at all. Yeah, it's easy, I just sit here practicing clicking on heads real good. But as soon as there's a Winston trying to kill me, suddenly things get a little bit more complicated than that, you know? It's the way of life. Anyway, I've reached an ELO, low masters, in which the mechanical aim of players is quite good, and playing against a good Hanzo is just infuriating at this point, because he counters a lot of my favorite heroes without me or anyone else seemingly being able to do anything about it. Even Brigitte, which is another of my hate heroes, is admittedly not as strong as I used to think. Yes, it's almost like she's been nerfed 1,000 times and most people were overreacting, but you know. Oh, but Jeff said she was overpowered. Yeah, Jeff's gonna say that after people have been screaming she's overpowered for fucking months. Anyway, I used to think, but I just can't wrap my hands around how Hanzo is even close to being balanced. I mean, he's a very well-rounded hero, you know. He's not as weak to dive as, some heroes are, certainly, you know, like, he's always gonna be better off than, like, Ana, isn't he? But, like, the counter to anybody that really wants some space is don't give them space. Just get up on their face and make it difficult. Like, Winston, if you jump on the guy and you have your bubble, this is the key, because I've seen a lot of Winstons jump on the Hanzo in the middle of their team without the bubble and die. If you jump on the Hanzo and you have your bubble, it becomes quite difficult for Hanzo to kill you before you kill him. Just because the bubble's kind of in the way. So the Hanzo will often end up just trying to run away from you, at which point the Winston has still done his job because he has taken time. He has basically removed Hanzo from the game for a little while, and anyone trying to help Hanzo at the time. So the answer is dive on the man and bully him. Don't give him the space he wants. And that's how you deal with any hero like that. Soldier, McCree, Ashe, Widowmaker. Just don't give them space. Don't give them any time. Just get up on them and harass the shit out of them. Anyway, Bastion versus Reinhardt. I was playing a quickly today, and was having an argument with my friend about how much damage his charge does. He said it shouldn't one-shot me, it only does 200 damage, but I said no, it one-shots me. It doesn't one-shot Bastion because it does 300 damage, but Bastion has armor, so it only does 295 damage to Bastion, meaning he just barely does survive the pin. I've been there, I know. But he has 5 health after you've pinned him, so assuming he was full health. So you kill him right after that. But no, it doesn't one-shot him. How to detonate Ash's Dynamite easier? Before I just shoot it, forehead responses. I just want to know how others detonate Ash's, So, if you don't adjust your aim, basically, it sort of lines up with the crosshair, and this is the easy, cheaty way to do it, but if you throw it and then just look down the sights without adjusting your aim at all, it will come into the crosshairs. So you can then detonate it like that, but I am very bad at detonating Ash's Dynamite anyway, because I'm very bad at clicking on things accurately, unfortunately, because, you know, just click the head's forehead, but yeah, that's what I do. Just wait for it to come back into the crosshairs after I've thrown it, which is the really cheap way to do it, basically. Which, you know, is not as efficient as it could be, probably, but hey, it's easy. Is Roadhog good for climbing? Yes, Roadhog is good for climbing, because he is an independent hero, doesn't require a lot of teamwork to get things done, doesn't require healing, can heal himself, is a big boy, does a lot of damage, and he has crowd control, a defensive ultimate, and the ability to one-shot people, also making him very good at punishing people for making mistakes. So yes, he is a good hero for climbing, at least in lower SRs. Once you start to get higher, people will be better at playing around Roadhog, which will make him less good than previously, but he is good for climbing. Any tips to improve my gameplay? This is a video. Stop asking for 222, but it's just so easy and straightforward. Check out the video I made. There you go. I guess. Ah, that was fucking loud. There you go. Watch that, I guess, if you're interested. Though, you know, I don't care if people want 222, because 222 is just a very straightforward team comp, you know, well-rounded, the Mario of team compositions. Nothing too strong, nothing too weak, just very straightforward. The thing that bothers me about people asking for 222 is they just ask for 222 without really thinking about what that actually means. Because I've seen people go 222 and then they'll get it, the tanks will be Roadhog Zarya, and they'll be perfectly satisfied with that. Because they know that the extent of it they know is 2 of each category. But they don't care about what's in that category. They just see 2 tanks and they're like, great! Perfect, 222. Even though Roadhog Zarya is an awful combination of tanks because it lacks a main tank. Also, neither have much in the way of synergy with each other. So, but the lack of a main tank is the main issue in there. The main issue. But they push tab, they see 2 tanks, and they're like, hey, great, awesome, we did it. But, you know, really you want a main tank, an off tank, a main healer, and off healer, you know. But, you know, people are stupid. So I don't care that people say that, I just want them to actually care about the team composition beyond the 222 part. Changing Sen's advice, does it feel good? Yes, no. Does it feel too fast? Okay, yes, no, does it feel good? If yes, leave as. If no, is it too fast? Or is it too slow? And then adjust accordingly from there. And that's how you find it. New to PC, I was wondering if there are any specific tips for getting better on PC, such as learning how to have more fluid movement and usage with my keyboard. I can't really tell you how to use a keyboard properly, my man, you know? You just need to get used to navigating the space with a mouse and keyboard. Finding your main. I've been playing Overwatch for a few months and have already reached level 130 plus. I still don't know who or which heroes I should main. I know people think that the best way is to flex. but whatever. I often stumble upon advice mostly saying to play who you enjoy playing, but I'm not sure which hero that is. I enjoy the game, but I'm not sure which heroes I enjoy, or none of them really seem to click with me. And I don't know what to tell you then, man. If you don't particularly enjoy any heroes over the others, I guess just pick the ones you're best at? Pretty is basically what it goes to, doesn't it? Because I do think you should play the heroes that you enjoy, because ultimately we're playing a video game, it's meant to be fucking fun, isn't it? As shocking as that might be. And if you like the hero, you're just more invested in that hero, and you're more likely to improve quickly if you personally enjoy the hero. So I do recommend like maining the heroes you like, but I guess if you don't like any of them particularly, just pick the ones you're best at, right? Like, what else is there to go by, really? New account has plummeted me into gold. Climbed up to high plat on main. I started a fresh account to see if I could place higher. I placed the same as my main mid-plat and have been losing almost every game since. I went full try-hard and quick play, leveling up to 25, so it couldn't have been because of wonky SR. Meanwhile, my main account is slowly crawling towards diamond again, the highest it's been for a few seasons. The only difference between accounts is I've stacked through find a group with my new account more, and have mostly solo queued on my main. One thing I did notice before my 10-game losing streak is that I had 2 games in a row of terrible throwing. I mean, that's variance, man. I had a group of 3 with matching toxic usernames, leaving simultaneously mid-game, immediately followed by a 5-stack of DPS that refused to switch and dicked around the entire match. I mean, that's just variance, you're gonna have that. I know it's all in my head, but I'm at a point where I feel like my new account is being punished, and I'm not sure why. I mean, that's why it's happening, is that that's the point you're at mentally. It's all in your head, my man. Because, what you'll usually have happen is people will make an alternate account with the intent of just using that to practice DPS heroes, something like that, you know? And, they will find that their alt account gets higher than their main account, and the reason I posit for that is that they just aren't taking that as account as seriously, so they aren't as worried about their SR on that account, and as a result they end up playing better because they aren't sitting there constantly panicking about their SR. However, you apparently have made this account with the intention of using it as like an MMR reset to try and climb. So you are now more worried about that account than your main account. So your main account ends up being the one that is climbing more than the alternate account, because you're actually worrying more about the alternate account. And now you're at the point where it's like, oh god, it's the man keeping me down, right? That's what's happening right there. It's all in your head. I want to learn Widowmaker, but I don't know where to begin. I mainly play Ashe, 77 hours, and a bit of McCree. I play hitscan for my Overwatch team, and I really like to incorporate Widow into my hero pool because I feel like we're at a severe disadvantage when we play against a game with this team with a semi-decent Widow. What are the best tutorials and practice routines for Widow? Which streamers should I watch to learn from? Does anyone have some tips for me? I mean, I don't buy into the whole practice routine things. I more just like go play the fucking game, man, and practice. Streamers, I don't know who plays Widowmaker, so maybe there's one in here. Yep, quite literally play her constantly in every map and every situations. It's true. Just do that. Streamers, oh yeah, Kefri does it, doesn't he? Kefri, I've never heard this fucking name before, and I would definitely remember it if I had seen it. Yeah, oh, Surefour? Oh, good aiming guides, whatever, fuck that. Yeah, Kefri, right, that man does it. But yeah, there's no real shortcut to it, especially with heroes that are more on the mechanical end than anything else, right? Like, Widowmaker just has a high mechanical requirement to play her. And I mean, you can still do well without having fucking top 500 aim and all that, because it's not just click on the forehead. It's, there's, you know, positioning, ult use, cooldown use, all that. So, you know, abusing sightlines and all that. Like, there's stuff you can do, but at the end of the day, Widowmaker is just a hero that has a high mechanical requirement, and there's no shortcut to that. You just have to play the hero until you are good at them mechanically. And life is difficult like that. I also find there's a tendency for, like, hit-scan players to be a little bit upset when they try and play Widowmaker because they've played, like, Ashe a lot, or McCree a lot. So they feel like when they play Widowmaker, they'll start at some kind of advantage. And I guess maybe a little bit, but not really. Widowmaker, like, all of the heroes aim differently to each other. None of them play exactly the same way. So even though you've got, like, great muscle memory built up for Ashe or McCree, that doesn't really translate to Widowmaker properly. You need to actually build up muscle memory for Widowmaker as well, which is done by playing the game a lot. You know, life is difficult like that. As a Widow player, how do I deal with double sniper? I often find I have trouble playing against Widow and Hanzo. While I focus Widow, I get killed by one and vice versa. How should I handle these situations? Basically, try to avoid fighting both of them at the same time, because you're not going to win 1v2. And I mean, this is true of all characters in the game. You are not favored in a 1v2, because there are two of them, and there is one of you. Similarly to real life, if you are in a real life fight, and you are fighting two people as one person, you are probably not going to win the fight unless you are a god. So it's true here as well. Try to position in a way that you only have to worry about one of them at a time. If you're focusing on one and getting killed by the other, that was probably a positioning error more than anything else, and while you were focusing on that one, you lost track of the other one, you weren't thinking about them properly, whatever, and you exposed yourself to that one, whereas the trick is to avoid fighting both of them at the same time. Or you can just say fuck it and pick Winston, right? And then just circumnavigate the issue by jumping on them. Let's see. Oh, this is for console. I got no clue. Nah, not for me. Is there a legit reason why D.Va can't crouch in her mech? Nah, it's all nonsense at the end of the day. But if you know me, you know I'm a big fan of consistency. I complain constantly about how some heroes get hurt by their own explosions, but not all of them. Constantly I will complain that Pharah is wearing high-tech battle armor and kills herself on her own explosions all the time, whereas Junkrat is dirty and has a peg leg, and he is completely immune to his own explosions. So stuff like that bothers me a lot. But you'll be glad to know the mech can't crouch is extremely consistent, because Hammond, also in a mech, can't crouch. So at least it's a consistency across both of the mech heroes. He does use the crouch button, because that's how you do pile driver, but he can't crouch in his mech. So good job, Blizzard. Consistent on that one, at least. We'll see when they release the next one. I swear to God, if they release the next of the mecha pilots, and they're like, and this one's got articulated knees so it can crouch, I'm gonna have a fucking fit. I swear to God, I will be so angry. If they release a mech hero and it can crouch, I will be furious. I will personally go down to Blizzard's offices and staple my long-worded email to Jeff's head. I will be so angry. God, I hate when the rules are not consistent across these things. Anyway, nah, it's complete nonsense though. She should be able to crouch in her mech. I was complaining about this not the other day actually, how D.Va can't crouch in her mech for some reason. I was like, why? I guess because, like, it has to just be like some kind of teabagging thing, doesn't it? Even though D.Va is the one in lore that has the most reason to teabag, right? Because, like, what's the other justification? A tank shouldn't be sneaky, then why can any of the tanks crouch, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It does annoy me. I don't think it should be that way. But at least it's consistent right now. Let's see. How does Sombra's hack target priority change in these different types of groups? Groups that aren't able to capitalize on hack callouts, groups that can't or won't capitalize on hack callouts. I mean, the people you want to hack are basically still just, like, good people to hack, you know? Like, I don't think the priority really changes much. I guess if you know your team isn't going to capitalize on what you do that much, you might be more inclined to just hack somebody to try and make it easier for you to 1v1 them. But, like, the people that are good to hack are just universally good to hack, basically. Like, it is never really a bad time to hack Reinhardt, you know? Like, that is just something that has removed that hero from the game for 6 seconds, you know? If your team doesn't capitalize on that, I mean, that sucks, but Reinhardt was still a really good hack target. I am also of the opinion that, like, even if you don't think your team is going to capitalize on what you do, you should still make what is mathematically the best choice you could make, right? Like, it doesn't make sense to me to go, yeah, well, Reinhardt's ordinarily a really good target to hack, but I don't think my team's going to capitalize on it properly, so instead I'll hack this Mercy that I'm trying to kill in the backline behind 6 people, you know? It's just hacking Reinhardt is still just really good, isn't it? Like, it doesn't make sense to me to be that way. I was playing a game of League of Legends earlier, so here's a comparison I'm going to make to you, right? Where, you don't need to know too much about the game to understand this. Basically, I was, one member of our team was saying to go for this neutral objective that if we kill it, gives you a strong buff that helps you push properly, right? Makes your minions stronger, all that, makes it easier to push. The thing is that taking that buff is risky, because the buff itself is a monster that fights back. So if the enemy team comes upon you while you're doing that buff, you can easily die, they get the buff instead, and then you throw the game. Because then suddenly they get a lot more gold on their team. They currently were missing 2 inhibitors, which meant those lanes were basically pushing themselves, because the minions in those lanes were stronger, and they only had 1 inhibitor left, which is on the opposite side of the map to this buff. And I wanted to go and get the last inhibitor, because if you get all of the inhibitors, suddenly all the lanes start pushing in even more strong minions. Because if you they spawn super minions, as well as the minions just being stronger. But if you take all 3, it spawns 2 super minions at a time instead. So I wanted to just go get the last inhibitor, because it's a lot harder to throw taking a turret and an inhibitor than it is to throw at the Baron, which is the neutral buff, because the turret will fight back, but like, it's nowhere near as scary as Baron Nashor, right? So that's what I wanted to do, because that to me was very high chance of winning, fairly low chance of throwing. But someone on my team, and this is the one that the team listened to, spoiler warning, it didn't go well, so I ended up feeling very vindicated about this. The person on the team wanted to go and get the Baron. And the reason they gave for wanting to do Baron was it is easier to get your team to group up at Baron than it is to get your team to group up and push a turret. And I don't believe that anyway to be true, but that to me just didn't make any sense as a decision, because I mean, there was a bunch of other stuff that went into it, but just purely on paper, Baron, high chance of throwing. If you die there, the enemy team gets Baron, suddenly they killed your team, they got Baron, and then suddenly they're going to be pushing for the next few minutes, and it's going to be way harder to stop them. So that's like the most typical way to throw a game of League of Legends, is go for Baron, die, they get it, lose a bunch of money in towers. It just didn't make any sense to me to go, well, we'll do this, which is just mathematically the worst play to make, because I think my teammates are more likely to go along with it. It's still the worst play. Like, why go for that? I just didn't understand. I'm not of the mindset where you should make the mathematically worst choice, the one that has the lower odds of working, just because you think it's the one your teammates are more likely to go along with. It doesn't make any sense to me to be that way. So I don't think, there's been a very long rambling point, but the moral of the story is, I don't think it matters. You should still just hack the people that are good to hack, regardless, because they are the people that are good to hack. Anyway, how to stop a steamroll on 2CP. Lessons from Overwatch League. This is a video, apparently. No, yeah, how to stop a steamroll. Lessons from Overwatch League, SVB. I've seen that name a couple times now. Go watch that, I guess, if you're interested. Also buy Sekiro, that was what that ad was for. It's going to be a very good game. which might seem a little bit, you know, well, the game isn't out yet, how are you going to say that? If there's a company I have faith in to make a good product, it's From Software, okay? Tips to help improve ammo management. Something I feel is massively setting me back is my poor ammo management, and by that I mean I inevitably need to reload when I'm out in the open and in the middle of a team fight, or not good. Or if I'm hog, I always hook someone, go for a melee shot, and only realize I'm out of ammo and need to reload. Any tips or advice to train me to look at the ammo icon in the bottom right and realize where I'm at with my ammo? I mean, something like that, like, we have stupid monkey brains. The best thing you can do is just be really aware of what you're doing and just, like, chastise yourself every time you do it, and eventually stupid monkey brain will accept it, you know? It's something that takes a long time to do because we humans do have tragically stupid brains, unfortunately. The only thing else you can do, other thing you can do really, if you want to, like, look at the icon, like, just look at your UI more in general, and this is something advice I've given before. It was actually in that guide that was on the first page a minute ago as well, because I read through that earlier. You can set a metronome or an alarm. You know, there's websites where you can set a metronome and all that, and you just set it to chime every whatever, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever you want. And then whenever you hear it chime, you just look at the ammo counter, you know, just take a second, look around. Where am I standing? What is my team doing? Look at the UI, look at the kill feed, look at your ammo. And then the theory is that eventually you don't need the metronome anymore because eventually it just becomes second nature to do it. But it helps remind you to do it while you're learning early on anyway, and that's about all I got for you, to be real. Dealing with very cluttered screen in team fights is zen. Relevant clip. Oh, I see. You mean in terms of, like, putting the orbs on people, I guess? Is that what you mean? Where I just can't tell what the hell is going on because of all the Discord Harmony low HP indicators. I see. So it's not actually getting it on the right person, it's just being overwhelmed by visual noise. Is there something else I can do to make it more clear what I'm shooting at? Or do situations like this always devolve into basically random spam points for them? Is this the best way to get value in team fights, messy team fights? Is it worth pushing up to get a better look, it puts me in danger? No, it's not worth doing that, I can tell you that one straight up. I do wish that there was a way to make various UI elements more transparent. They have actually started to do this, because you can actually make the defend and attack objective things more transparent. It's actually quite transparent on this guy's UI. Okay, that's what's going to play now, I guess. Cool. I do wish you could make, like, these UI elements more transparent as well. And, I mean, to me, the issue isn't really just that, like, there's a bunch of icons bouncing around. It's just that, like, all of these people physically are on top of each other as well, so it's harder to just see what's going on, and we're at slightly lower elevation, so we're, like, ass height with Reinhardt, basically. I mean, I was gonna say it's something that comes with time, but I guess being, this high level probably isn't the case for you. I mean, you can try and position in a way that's a little bit easier to see, because, I mean, personally I would find it easier to see if I was standing more off to the left, just because then the icons wouldn't be, like, literally right on top of each other, they would be slightly adjacent to each other, which would make it a little bit easier to see. But I mean, sometimes, like, Overwatch is a very visually busy game, Because, honestly, I expected to see a lot worse than this, because half the time, like, Moira's coalescing through the middle of here, right? Like, Lucio's using sound barrier, fucking D.Va's in here firing rockets around. As far as teamfights go for Zenyatta, this one's actually pretty fucking clean. All things considered, it's just two Reinhardts bumping into each other. I mean, you can extrapolate based on, like, if you know who is over here, right? What's going on? Because, I mean, in here, we know this is a Reinhardt because he just countercharged off the other one. So, even though you can't physically see necessarily what's going on in there, like, you know roughly what shape Reinhardt is, right? So you can still aim for the guy and all that. And then, when, like, 9 people are on top of each other, punching each other to death, yeah, it becomes kind of a crapshoot at that point. Basically, like, yeah, sometimes it's going to be kind of a mess. I wonder if anybody else has got different input on this, because to me, I'm basically just like, yeah, sometimes it's going to be a crapshoot when 9 people are fighting on top of each other. So it only appears when your reticle is closer to your target. Yeah, the transparency would be really good. To play the corner into the point room to get a better close look, but otherwise, yeah, you know. And not hit scan, so at least from that range you might as well spam. Your hits aren't accurate anyway. Well, I don't agree with that. Zen's projectiles are pretty fast. I always look at my Discord icon and spam just below it, obviously trying to account for travel time, since the icon can always be seen on the screen no matter what's going on. It makes it easy to distinguish targets, to keep track of their enemies and their movements. Yeah, also since it stays on enemies behind it, yeah, you can keep track of flankers and all that. Yeah, it's true enough, you can always just aim a little bit below the Discord icon, I suppose, and that would account for it. I mean, Overwatch is just a very visually busy game. Sometimes you're not really going to be able to see what's going on, quite frequently in fact. Imagine how I feel when I'm playing Reinhardt and I'm right in the middle of all the particle effects. Doesn't feel very good, it gets very disorientating very quickly. Imagine if you're then also playing Winston and using Primal Rage instead and you're in the middle of all the particle effects. Fuck knows what's going on half the time. And it's something that only gets worse as time goes by as well, and they add these more and more weird heroes in that have more weird particle effects, right? Because now I might also be seeing all of that through a fucking, like, 3 fields from Batista as well, huh? I know it's Baptiste, but Batista's what I'm calling him. Right, like I might also be looking through his amplification matrix, through Symmetra's wall, through the immortality field, and then there's God knows what's going on in the middle of all there as well, right? Like, it's gonna get a very annoying game to look at as time goes by. There might be fucking mines in the way as well. It's a mess. That's just kind of how all games get as well. As time goes by, they just get more and more visually cluttered, I find. Like, League of Legends, God, the game's a mess sometimes when certain teams are fighting against each other and they have certain combinations of skins that change the particle effects as well. Because you can be fucking, you know, these fucking Christmas Veigar, who's got the fucking, there's a little ring that's all these Christmas trees that are like flashing. He's dropping fucking presents and baubles into there and all that shit. You got somebody spawning the infinite void under there with this massive tether going through the entire enemy team. You got Cho'Gath in there, who just Google a picture of Cho'Gath. He's very fucking big, and that's his gimmick as a hero. He starts off very small though, and gets very big over time. Very satisfying. When you level up his ultimate, he just gets bigger. It's very exciting. You just click the button, poof, you get bigger. It's very nice. I enjoy that hero a lot. Is it okay to ask how Zen's Discord functions? I am a returning player from when the game first released and when things were not widely known and now looking for answers. I'm not sure when the 30% extra damage takes place. For example, a hero does 10 damage per shot and hits someone with the Discord, they deal 13 damage then, without armor that is. If Ana boosts them, they would deal 15 damage per shot. Would the Discord be calculated last and then boost the 15 by 30% and then go to 19.5? Oh, okay, so is it the damage boost or is it the damage boost or the damage amplification that takes place first, basically? I am not sure how it orders this. I think it should do the damage boost first. No, yes, it should definitely do that now, because damage boosts are now calculated when the shot is fired, rather than when it collides. So yes, it should definitely do the damage boost first. I don't know if it did it beforehand, but if it is now when the projectile is fired, rather than when it collides, it definitely does the damage boost first, and then the Discord damage when it collides with the target. Thank goodness I read the patch notes. That made that much easier to figure out. Because it has to be like that now. There's no way it calculates the Discord damage first if it calculates the damage boost when it fires. Go the extra mile and cross-link your floods to phobefeedback.com. I kind of fucking hate that website, to be perfectly honest with you. But only because it annoys me personally as someone who records videos over the top of that website. Mostly because you can't have it running in full screen mode, which means I have to always do something fucking weird with the screen dimensions, and it's very annoying. You have to line it up. So, you know. fine website, I guess, but I hate it because of things that specifically affect me. So obviously they should change it. Climbing up the ladder and my thoughts about it. So I did it. I climbed from bronze to silver, to be exact. I climbed 644 SR in Season 13 to... okay, climbed from 2. That's a lot. That's almost 1,000. That's good. I'd been stuck in there since Season 11. Here are a few things that helped me get out of there. Positive attitude. Stay positive. Try to avoid getting tilted. Oh yeah, we're gonna go through that usual... Yep, we're gonna go through all the usual stuff. Actually, we're gonna go back to page 1 for a second to look at that, guide video, because, I saw something in here where I was like, yeah. So, micro errors and useless advice. Basically, aim better. Oh, you shouldn't have missed that. You should have hit that shot. Pointing out micro errors to yourself or others is a complete, absolute, full waste of time. Fully agree. It's something people fixate a lot on, though. And the whole moral of the story is basically just, like, think about what you're doing. Always ask, like, what could I have done, even if it seemed completely hopeless? Like, what could I have done to improve the situation? And just make sure I'm not the problem, basically. And that's just more productive than the way most people approach things. General tips for climbing. Unless you are like 4,200 plus, there's always more you could do. Even if you're up there, there's probably still more you can do. No one's fucking perfect, you know? Maybe you feel like you're playing, but you aren't. Yeah. Whining is useless. True story. Shut up and carry them. That's the whole point. Is showing that you can win, even in a team situation. You can carry a game to win. So yeah, whining's pointless. Team comp shouldn't be an issue till you get to Masters. Even then, don't worry about it that much, to be honest with you. Outside of, like, you know, there's obviously, like, really bad comps you can have that you should try and avoid, but honestly, even if you're Masters, I've been there. You can still, the shit comps still win in Masters, don't you worry. Speak ups and don't flex onto something you're uncomfortable with. You don't need great mechanics to climb. It's true, I'm using a GameCube controller. Yeah, nice. Oh, what's that fighting game? Oh, it was Guilty Gear XR. There was a guy who played that game, and he uses a fucking steering wheel to play the game. He doesn't actually, like, use the turning part of the steering wheel. Like, he's got a controller on the steering wheel, basically. But, like, it's not particularly ergonomic, is it? You know, using a fucking steering wheel and the controller in the middle of the steering wheel to play the game. But hey, you know, it just goes to show you that, like, if you know how to play the game, you don't really need to be great at it mechanically to actually climb. I've gotten to a pretty good rank in Dragon Ball FighterZ. I'm fucking terrible at the game mechanically. I drop combos all the time. I can't do any of the super optimized combos because I'm just not that mechanically good at the game. This also affects the characters I play because I really like the character Vegito just because I like him as a character, but he's also really independent and his combos can be pretty optimal without actually having to worry about doing too much, like, fancy stuff. So it just basically is easier for me. But I'm fucking terrible at the game mechanically, right? If you ever saw me play, like, I could be playing against a guy that's like 9 ranks lower than me, and that dude will know how to do better combos than I do. But I actually know how to play the game a little bit. That's the difference. That boy sat in the training room and practiced that one optimal combo 5,000 times, so he knows how to do that combo. And you know, that very much applies to the Bruce Lee thing, right? I don't fear the man who's practiced 1,000 combos once, I fear the man who's practiced one combo 1,000 times. But that guy knows how to land it on a training bot, he doesn't know how to actually land it on a human being, and that's the difference, right? I know how to play against a human being, rather than knowing how to play against a training bot. So, I'm fucking terrible at the game mechanically, but I've managed to climb because I just know how to play the game instead. Mechanics aren't everything in any game. It's no issue. Like a GameCube controller. There's also a guy who plays with an unmodified PlayStation 1 controller. So he has to, like, plug it through an adapter to get it to run, basically, on modern hardware, because it's a PlayStation 1 controller. But the guy plays with a PlayStation 1 controller. Like, you know, I think he plays Street Fighter? I'm not 100% sure. But, you know, mechanics are not the end of the world, basically. Like, if you know how to play the game, like, reflexes aren't the end, like, oh, fuck, I'm like 25. Does that mean I can't play the game anymore? Nah, yeah, your reflexes won't be as good as the fucking spry 16-year-old hyped up on Adderall and caffeine, but, like, if you know how to play the game, it doesn't matter. A lot of reaction can be substituted for prediction instead. Anyway, rambling around the point, I mostly just wanted to talk about how this guy plays a fighting game with a fucking steering wheel, basically, which is pretty cool, even if he doesn't do the actual steering wheel, because unfortunately that doesn't really do much input for the game, sadly. Because, you know, obviously I saw the headline, I was like, holy shit, and I expected him to just be fucking drifting with it. No, sadly not the case. But still pretty cool. Lost SR from a draw. I need answers. I lost 14 SR from a draw. I don't think I've ever lost SR from a draw, so I guess maybe it was just a glitch. Never had it happen to me. Aim completely gone. Bad aim day or something? Certainly does happen. Almost exclusively, but realized one-tricking Widow was not an option in comp. It is. You just have to be good at Widow. I was pretty okay at Widow, for my rank, in my opinion. Silver, lol. I picked up Tracer and got decent at her, then started Zarya, however I started playing Osu with Mouse around the time I picked up Tracer, as I feel it helps my tracking. I enjoy Osu and play it not just as a warm-up, so I haven't played Overwatch for the past 2-3 days now. My Widow aim is non-existent. I mean, like, you do just have bad days sometimes, or am I too addicted to clicking circles? I mean, I've seen that before where people are... This was advice I've seen people give to, like, people who play MOBAs, like League of Legends and Dota, where, like, hey, if you play Osu, that can help you with your mouse precision, right? Which, I guess, is technically true. It could theoretically help you do that. But, I mean, I don't think it really helps that much, because it's just not quite the same thing, you know, still. Clicking on a circle on in rhythm with music is not quite the same thing as, like, picking out the man in the clusterfuck of particle effects, right? Anyway, you do just... Aim is one of those things that's inconsistent, and if you do take some time away from playing the game, you'll notice that, like, when you start again, it won't be as good, because you need to get used to it again. It's one of those things, it fluctuates. Frame rate suddenly super slow, and it ran like crap. Normally I get around 200 plus FPS, but cap it at 141. But now it only got, not even real. It was fine, ran fine earlier today. I don't know what to tell you, man. Computers are fucked up sometimes, you know? Don't I know? I can still see into my computer right now, because ever since that one issue I had, which I determined to probably be overheating related, I've just left the side off of it, basically, now, so I can look in and see if it's about to catch fire, basically. It doesn't mean I have to dust it a lot more frequently, sadly, though. Computers fuck up sometimes, you know? Life is difficult like that. Finally hit top 500, great job. How to play counter dive as Hammond. I actually shouldn't address this, because I don't know how to play Hammond. Hammond's a complete blind spot for me. I've got nothing productive to say to you about Hammond, basically. Possibly just because I don't respect him as a person, because he's a hamster. And that's why. How to break out a 2400 SR, currently stuck at 2400 SR, and can fly in the room. To break through fire, I mean, to me, trying to get into platinum, or like very high gold, trying to get into platinum, that's the point to me where you need to start worrying about actually playing as a team. You need to actually, like, play around your teammates, because up until that point, I think you can get by mostly just playing around the enemy team, you know, punishing them for doing stuff, positioning around them, all that kind of jazz, basically. I think Platinum, getting into that, is the point where you start needing to play around your own teammates as well, starting to keep track of, like, what your teammates are currently up to, what's pressuring them, coordinating ultimates. Not necessarily coordinating ultimates with them, but like acknowledging what their ultimates are and how that can affect how you play. You need to start, I think, keeping track of your own team more at that point than the enemy team. In the end, you do still just kind of need to grind it out, you know, more than anything else. When you're trying to climb, there will always come the point where you have to just grind it out regardless, but, you know, I think you can kind of break the ranks up into the predominant skill that you need to know in that rank. Which, you know, bronze, you just need to learn how to control your hero properly, right? Silver, you, I think, just need to play around the enemy team more, because they'll be a little bit better at that point. And learning how to use your ultimate properly at that point becomes very important. And then climbing into gold, getting through gold is where you start, like, keeping track of the enemy team more closely. You start accounting for flankers, because they're actually going to start doing things that they should be doing at that point. You need to actually expect the enemy team to use ultimates correctly, so you need to account for their ultimates, right? You start playing around the fact the enemy team will sort of start to know what they're supposed to do. And then platinum is when you need to start acknowledging that your team will also sort of supposed to know what they're going to do, so you need to work a little bit more with them at that point. And then, you know, past that, it starts to get more about little micro-optimization stuff more than anything like that. Like, once you start getting high and up through platinum, I think positioning starts to become extremely important around that time. When people actually do know how to dive and jump on you correctly, then suddenly positioning properly becomes very important. But regardless, you do kind of need to grind it out, but I think playing around your own team is the biggest thing around that SR, usually. Is Rein not as valid for climbing low elo? Vlad? I saw valid, and for some reason my mind extrapolated that as Vlad. Anyway, Rein's fine for climbing low elos. I opened it, and I didn't even read the rest of the question, because, I mean, you know, upload a VOD later of my Reinhardt play. Do others find it harder to climb with Reinhardt in lower elos than the ones they're used to? No. No, I don't. I've played Reinhardt in lower elos, and it's really fucking easy in lower elos, because, you know, the other team, they kind of know, right? They kind of know that if you have a Reinhardt, they're also supposed to have a Reinhardt, right? Because it's just, if you don't, you leave yourself very vulnerable to Earthshatter. So, and most teams are not good enough to play around Earthshatter properly without a Reinhardt. So if you have a Reinhardt, it usually prompts a Reinhardt from the other team. And if they have a Reinhardt, it frequently prompts a Reinhardt from your team as well. But to me, it's like, if they didn't start on Reinhardt first off, you're probably better than them because they didn't start on Reinhardt, so they're probably not as comfortable playing Reinhardt. But anyway, if you're better than the other Reinhardt, you win. Then that's basically it. Reinhardt has, like, really high carry potential, just because his ultimate is so strong, and the utility he brings to a team is so strong as well. Because Earthshatter is, of course, one of the scariest ultimates in the game. Especially if your Reinhardt doesn't know how to block a fucking Earthshatter, right? And the utility of his shield is just really good, and on top of that, he gets to do good damage as well. So, like, Reinhardt's good. Like, the thing people complain about is the fact that your team won't play around you properly when you're playing Reinhardt. I've never found that to be as much of an issue as people claim it to be, and I mean, you know, anecdotal evidence, but I find that people, if you're playing Reinhardt, they typically know they're meant to stand behind your shield, because the shield is this giant blue rectangle of safety. So people tend to gravitate to playing around Reinhardt, right? They might not be playing around you properly, they'll do a lot of stupid shit like walk through your shield, which is very annoying, but they will play around you to an extent still, right? And I don't care what team you're playing with, if you land a good Earthshatter, that requires no prompting from you other than landing the Earthshatter to get people to collapse on them, right? Like, your team will jump on the people you Earthshattered. And if it was a good Earthshatter, you often don't need your teammates to actually get anything out of the Earthshatter. Because usually, I'll Earthshatter, like, a couple of people, like 2-3 people in front of me, sometimes only 1 or 2 people in front of me. And I'll basically be able to kill them myself, right? Because unless it's like nothing but tanks in front of me that got earth shattered. But I would also not consider that to be a great earth shatter a lot of the time either. Like if you earth shatter a few people in front of you, and there's squishy people in there, you'll kill them by yourself. And I don't care what team you're playing with, as long as you didn't do that, like, 1v6, right? You killed several members of their team by yourself. You are now massively favored to win this team fight. And depending on who you killed, you maybe just win the team fight right there and then. So, like, it's not that hard to climb as Reinhardt in lower SRs. I think people lean on my teammates are not playing around me as Reinhardt as a crutch, because they see Reinhardt as a very team-dependent character. And yeah, he's team-dependent, but he's nowhere near as team-dependent as someone like Mercy. Like, Reinhardt has a lot of agency over the game. I think the problem is that those players are expecting their team to do a lot more damage than they actually will. So they'll go for these really aggressive plays, expecting the correct response from their team, and then they don't get the response they expected, which leads to them dying because they ended up overextending as a result, which then leads to them saying, my teammates are too bad, I can't climb as Reinhardt. The reality is, you do need to adjust your expectations when you're in, like, lower SRs. And, you know, I just said, right, don't make a statistically worse play just because you don't think your teammates will react appropriately to it. You should still make what is just the best play mathematically. And, you know, the thing is that Reinhardt players are almost always playing too aggressively anyway, because he's one of those heroes that makes people play really aggressively, when in reality they should often be playing a lot more defensively anyway. And this is true all the way up, don't you worry. I've seen players in fucking Masters that I'm like, this Reinhardt is actually fucking suicidal. He needs to calm the fuck down. And, you know, he kind of gets away with it because the DPS and healers on his team are good enough to keep up, pretty much. But, like, if you try and do that kind of shit where the DPS and healers are not good enough to keep up, you'll end up getting punished for it a lot more. Is my difference in thinking on this, basically. But, like, if you... Reinhardt's got great chance to carry. If you get a good Earth Shatter, your team needs no further guidance, right? You have Earth Shattered a bunch of men. They know you Earth Shattered a bunch of men. It basically falls on you to Earth Shatter them correctly. And you win the team fight. And it's kind of that straightforward a lot of the time. I've always found this to be massively overblown in regards to Reinhardt, and it might just be me. It might be very rich for me, as someone who climbed 2 Masters by playing almost entirely Reinhardt, to go, oh yeah, it's so easy to climb as Reinhardt in low SRs, you just Earth Shatter the enemy team and win, forehead, right? Like, it might be very rich of me to say that, but, dude, Reinhardt's so fucking strong. It's just so many people are bad at playing Reinhardt is the issue. What a rambling and incoherent point that was. That's all we do around here, though. Some questions, advice on Soldier 76. I'm a new player and find him easiest to play with. He is the most friendly hero in my opinion. Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. It has everything you need as a beginner. You can run away from the fight in many situations if things get dicey. With the infinite sprint, you can recharge your own health with high frequency, and in terms of aim and gun mechanics, his rifle is probably the easiest gun in the game. Well, I mean, I guess if we're talking hit scan. Yeah, I was gonna say, well, you know, got fucking Tesla cannon in the game, right? But yeah, if we're talking hit scan. High amounts of bullets in the magazine, I'm wondering if it is a serious hero at the highest level of the game. Is it okay to specialize in this hero and reach the highest ranks in the game, or do you eventually need to switch to something else? I tried a bunch of other heroes and felt hopeless with them, but with Soldier I can make heavy contributions in the game and get a lot of kills. My playstyle is I just always make sure I have some cover and prefer high ground when possible. Yep, I engage with enemies where I strafe in and out of cover. I'm taking a lot of hits on the way, I try to flank and get a kill or two. It's very bad to do that. Don't flank on Soldier. It usually works. Just wondering if this is a good way to play him.
Also, is it okay to stick with him even at higher ranks, or will he become more useless at more serious competitive levels? Thanks. So, I mean, I'm of the mindset that you can play any hero at any level and be perfectly fine. Who's that guy that plays Torbjorn, you know? Got to very high rank. I don't remember the guy's name. He's very famous. He's got like 5 accounts banned or something like that at this point, I think, because people just keep reporting him anyway. Fewey? Fewey? That sounds right. Something to that effect. You can get to high ranks playing any. I've seen people only play Bastion. I've seen Bastion one-trick players who have gone all the fuck way up there, right? Like, you can play any hero and get away with it as long as you're good at the hero, basically. Soldier, I mean... Soldier used to be a lot better than he is. They fidget with him a lot, and it tends to adjust where he's at, basically. There was times change. There was a point in time where Attack Visor was considered basically analogous to Nanoblade, but we know that Nanoblade is basically still fantastic all the time, whereas Nano Visor not always, pretty much. So, you know, times change as well, but basically the gist is, yes, you can. You might struggle with it, as you get higher and people get better at playing dive heroes, basically, but Soldier is also one of the heroes that's better equipped to deal with dive anyway, because he does have sprint and biotic field, so he's not so bad at getting dove as like some heroes are still. So, you know, it's one of those things where Soldier is the kind of hero where he's very rarely going to be the worst decision you could make, but he'll also probably never be the best decision you can make, and this is the same thing I say about Moira. Moira is the hero I play by far the most now, so, you know, yeah. It's not just me talking shit on Moira and Soldier players, I do believe this. They are extremely well-rounded heroes. They do a little bit of everything, but that means they don't excel in any one area. And that... you know, that has its own appeal, being very well-rounded as far as a hero goes, but it also means that while there's nothing bad about you, there's nothing fantastic about you, and, you know, a jack of all trades is a master of none, right? Whereas someone like Zenyatta is not particularly well-rounded as far as heroes go, but what he has as far as strengths are incredibly strong. Right? Like, Discord is very powerful, and Transcendence is very powerful. So while he's not as well-rounded as, like, Moira or Soldier is, his specialization makes him better than them, just because what he specializes in is so good. And he has more obvious drawbacks as well, but, again, the benefit outweighs the negative a lot of the time. So, you know, it's that kind of situation for me for Soldier, where, like, he doesn't bring as much to the table as someone like Widowmaker, right? Or McCree. But he also doesn't bring with him many negatives, either. Other than just probably not being the best thing you could have picked, pretty much. But, you know... the moral is, yes, you can still climb a Soldier, and it's fine to main him. It's fine to main whoever you want to main. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that much. 95% GPU usage in practice range, but only 50-60% in comp. That's pretty fucked up sounding. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. I'm not a tech guy. What is your playstyle with certain heroes and tips for that playstyle? From Jane, specifically this one. And during it, Jane talks about different playstyles with Zen. I never really had this thought come across my mind, but it makes some people go balls to the walls, while others may be more passive. This got me thinking about how I play certain heroes. For example, I play very aggressive Rein that likes to make yeah. With my big dick energy. You're not allowed to say sentences like that. You're not allowed to describe yourself as having big dick energy, okay? I play very passively with Zarya because my energy is lower and so I ask all of you, what playstyles do you have with certain heroes, and what sort of tips do you have for those who want to play that sort of style? In general, I play very aggressively, just with most heroes I play. Just because I'm a very aggressive person, pretty much, so it tends to transfer over. I mean, the thing I would say is, first off, I wouldn't recommend playing extraordinarily aggressively, because it tends to make things just overall more difficult for you. There are more things you need to keep track of, there are more things that can go wrong, there are more things you need to account for. And if you fuck up, the penalty is much steeper, usually. I do recommend when you're learning how to play the game or learning the hero, go balls to the wall all the time, and then just, like, meaningfully learn from it, because that's how you end up getting a really good idea of what your hero's boundaries are. So, you know, just go mad aggro when you're learning how to play a hero, and then just learn from it and go like, alright, that was too aggro, we'll tone it back a little bit next time, right? Because I think people usually have the opposite problem where they play too passively when they're learning how to play a hero, which means you get punished less, but it also means that you aren't as familiar with your hero's limits as you could be if you played more aggressively. But, like, the thing is, if you play really aggressively, you're usually going to be further up, which means it gets harder to keep track of all of the moving parts in the game, especially in a game like Overwatch that moves around so much. You end up having to use a lot of your abilities aggressively, which means you don't get to use them defensively. I do a lot of shit I tell people not to do, right? Like, I'll fade in to these situations as Moira, and then I'll tell people, don't do that. Don't fade into the people like that, because that's very, very aggressive, and you will get yourself punished a lot of the time, because once you're on cooldown once fade's on cooldown, you're very vulnerable. But I do that kind of shit all the time still, because I've basically just decided I can get away with it. Pretty much. But, like, it's just harder to play like that at the end of the day, you know. And if you do well, you see great returns, sure, but you also see really bad returns at the same time. I'm kind of counterintuitive in this way, where, like, I like to play really aggressively, but at the same time, the only stat I really worry about is my deaths. So I'm this guy who plays really aggressively, and I'm constantly worried that I'm dying too much at the same time, which has led to this. It's very, very odd, isn't it, that I'm that way? Because you'd expect me to care less about deaths if I'm a very aggressive player. Because you'd think I'd be just like, well, you know, what do you expect, right? But I know I should have done that and not died for doing it at the same time. It's just harder. You just have to keep track of more shit. So basically the tip I would give you if you want to play really aggressively is just, like, get really good at processing a lot of information fast, and get really good at risk assessment, pretty much, because you're going to be more in the action, so it's going to be harder for you to have good awareness of the situation, because playing Zenyatta, you're like 1,000 miles away from the action. It's very easy to understand exactly what's going on in the fight. Whereas if you're in the middle of them, it's a lot harder to keep track of that. This is people say that as well when they play like Reinhardt or Bridget, right? They're like, I'm right in the middle of the enemy team and I have trouble keeping track of what's going on, because I just physically can't see as much of the fight. So what do I do about that? And the answer is you have to do a lot more inference. You have to do a lot more, like, mentally tracking where people are instead, because you can't visibly see them. So you just have to, like, based off where they were a minute ago, like when you last saw them, remember where that is. And, like, people can't go fucking anywhere on the map, right? Like, they're gonna go within a few places of where you were, or where they were, rather. So, like, you gotta read a little bit more into it, because people often only react to what they see at the time, but you will be greatly benefited from thinking about what people are likely to do, given who they're playing, how they play, if you've seen them play, and, like, just what the hero is, what the map is. Because if the enemy team's got, like, a Genji on it, right, there's only ever a few places Genji's likely to go at a time, right? Like, they have certain routes they take through maps. So if you know they have a Genji, you can keep track of roughly where Genji is, because you can either visibly see him, or if you can't, there's only a couple of places he's likely to be going. So you still know roughly where he is. If I've seen, like, if my team's got Ana and Zenyatta, if I'm right up there, I might not know exactly where they are, but I know roughly where they are, right? Because I've seen where they're shooting me from. I saw them a second ago. I know what hero they're playing, so I know roughly where they are. I've just got to keep track of that in my mind, because I can't see it all the time. And that's the thing with playing aggressively. You have to just kind of mentally keep track of what people are doing and what people are likely to be doing at the time. Which is, it's just more work, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, it's just more effort to play like that. So really just don't do it. Just play less aggressively. And like, you know, I'll do shit that I tell people not to do. Do as I say, not as I do, and all that. Inevitable coordinated pushes. How do you, as a solo queue or even duo stack, stop these pushes where everyone on the other team presses Q and somehow becomes coordinated for the first time all match? Do you play aggressive and try to get picks at that point? I mean, I'm of the firm belief where if you can't get through a choke point, it doesn't matter how hard it's been for you. If you throw 6 ultimates at that choke point, you're going to get through that choke point. That's, you know, not great from an ult economy standpoint, but I don't think there's any situation in the game that can't be fixed by throwing 6 ultimates at it, right? Because ultimates are just really strong. Maybe if you had 6 really bad ultimates. Like, we've got a Zarya, but we got no combo, right? We got, like, what would be a really bad combination of ultimates? We've got, like, Zarya, D.Va. So that's just a bad combo of tanks anyway. We've got Zarya, D.Va. God, what do you even pick from that point? I struggle to even think of a situation, because every team comp I run through my mind, I'm like, no, even if you threw those 6 ultimates at it, you should still work. Like, you know, it's just really difficult if they throw 6 ultimates at you. You'll have to throw a lot of ultimates back at them in response, pretty much. I mean, it happens all the time, right? Where, like, you think you've got it in the bag, the enemy team have been doing nothing, they got, like, they're in overtime, and then suddenly they rush, and, like, fuck, it's like a different team's playing. I've heard that one before, right? Like, if my team played as well as they do in overtime all the time, I'd never lose a single match. And that's true. A lot of the time, people play way better in overtime, counterintuitively enough. And that's true of me. Like, I'm also kind of this way where I do a lot better under pressure than if I'm not pressured at all. And the reason is I psych myself out too much if I've got time to think about it, right? Whereas if I'm under pressure at the time, I got less time to think about it, and therefore I've got less time to psych myself out about it. If I play like a rhythm game or something, I'll hit the like really hard part no problem, but then as soon as that one note at the end is coming by itself, I'm like, alright, we're gonna hit it, we're gonna hit it, we're gonna hit it, we're gonna hit it, and then I completely fuck it up, even though it's just this one note coming at the slowest possible pace. I'm that kind of person. But yeah, basically, if they throw 6 ultimates at you, and like coordinated, then, or seemingly, even if it's by accident, you're gonna need to throw a lot of ultimates back at them, because that's just kind of how the game is. It's very based around ultimates. Unfortunately, you know. Is it realistically possible to climb just maining supports? Yes, it absolutely is. Do you play Mercy by any chance? So that's usually the ones that say it. Doesn't say. No, yeah, you can climb as a support, no problem. I do recommend not playing Mercy until you're in a decent SR, because Mercy has close to no agency over the game herself. I think of Mercy as being an amplifier for her teammates, where if your teammates are good, you can make them excellent. But if your teammates are bad, you can only really make them mediocre, right? So I don't recommend playing Mercy until you get to, like, gold, somewhere around mid-gold, basically. I think people become decently competent enough. But up until that point, I recommend playing basically any other support first. I do recommend playing the supports that have more control over the game. Like, Ana is by far the best support you can play to climb, because she has easily the most agency over the game. She does decent damage, all of her cooldowns are extremely powerful, and her ultimate can make people into gods. So Ana, just by far the best support you can play to climb. And then after that, I think it's Zenyatta and then Moira. For similar reasons, there's that they have a lot of control over the game. Zenyatta gets to do a lot of damage and makes other people do more damage, and his ultimate just cancels out other very scary ultimates. And Moira, well-rounded, gets to do damage, good offensive and defensive ultimate. You can kind of make people go in with it if they're hesitant to do so. Does damage, does a lot of healing. Good heroes got a lot of agency over the game. Also, mostly independent. They don't require too much assistance to get their job done. Zenyatta and Ana kind of do if they're getting dove very aggressively. But if you're in, like, lower SRs as well, people don't know how to dive you correctly. So it evens out in the end anyway, I think, a lot of the time. But those are the ones I recommend playing. But yes, you absolutely can climb as a support main. I've done that before, because I played Reinhardt up until Moira got released. And then I started playing a lot more Moira after that point. And I've climbed on Moira as well, currently having to climb again because I lost my main account, so now suddenly my Smurf has become my actual account, which is very inconvenient. But yeah, you absolutely can climb as a support, is the moral of the story. It can be harder, no doubt, but you can do it. I can never manage to land the Blink melee or Blink 180 melee. I always whiff or end up nowhere. If you have any tips for this, what are some good ways to improve your movement jukes mind games? I mean, it's the kind of thing that you just want to be muscle memory, right? Like, you just want to know how far you're gonna go, basically, or know where you're gonna end up, pretty much. Because as well, with Tracer, like, what you'll watch, if you watch someone play Tracer, this I think is really obvious compared to, like, low-level Tracers compared to high-level Tracers, where you'll notice the low-level Tracer will blink and then adjust their aim. Whereas the high-level Tracer player is adjusting their aim as they're blinking. So you'll watch the person blink, you'll watch them blink and then snap to the person that they're aiming at. Whereas the high-level person will blink and already be aiming at the person they want to be aiming at before the blink has actually completed, right? So like, blink, already looking, versus blink, then look, pretty much. Like, it's the sort of stuff you want to just be muscle memory, to know where you're gonna end up, because that makes it so much easier to adjust your aim and everything after that, if you know where you're gonna appear, roughly, to the enemy team. And I mean, there's no real shortcut to that, is there? Like, you know, I guess you could do stuff with the, training range, where there's a bunch of stuff in there that's like fixed distances from each other, so you can just try and practice blinking back and forth between those points, so you get a feel roughly for how far the blink goes, and then try and just get used to it from that point. Just from looking at it more closely in this controlled environment, you get an idea of where the blink goes, and then the difficulty is transitioning from the controlled environment to the more chaotic environment. If you've seen fighting games, this is also why the training room also always looks like a fucking insane asylum, with like vertical lines drawn on the backgrounds and maybe across the floor as well. And the reason for that is you use the lines to give you an idea of how long your moves reach, right? Like, it's a lot easier for me to figure out the exact length of Ryu's foot if I can compare it against this very clear visual indicator in the background or on the floor. And then the difficulty, and this is why I hate when people just play on the fucking training stage, right? It's like, the whole point is to learn off the indicators and then play it in a real match, but no, they just play on the training stage anyway. But whatever. So, like, the idea is you learn how to do it in this controlled environment where you're not under pressure and you have these measurements in the environment that tell you the distance and length and all of this. And then the difficulty is going from the controlled environment to the chaotic environment. But it helps give you like a rough idea, at least, to get started, pretty much. But that's all I got for you as far as that goes, because it really is just like, you really want that to be muscle memory, and improving your movement and all that, it really is just like, play the game a lot. Like, there's no way to really shortcut that, to be honest. Like, you can do stuff like I just said and they'll maybe help you, but like, at the end of the day, we talked about this like last week, where I don't think there's any kind of way to shortcut having fluid movement. I do think it's just, there's so much that goes into it. It really is just grinding out games until you get good at movement, pretty much. Unfortunate, but you know. Some things in the game, in any game, there's no way to skip to the end. There's always going to be this painful learning experience right at the start. You want to learn how to play Widowmaker? That's great for you. I encourage you to learn how to play Widowmaker if you want to learn how to play Widowmaker. but be ready for it to be extremely fucking depressing for the first, like, we'll be realistic, like, first, like, 30 hours that you play that game as that hero. It's gonna feel bad. Maybe even longer than that. It's gonna feel bad, because there's a very steep initial learning curve to it, you know? But then it gets better. But there's no way to skip that initial period. All you can really do is grind through it, sadly. There's always that thing where there's no shortcut and it just sucks. So anyway, there you go. That's all I got for you. So thank you very much for watching. If you did, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer. If you haven't already, you can join our Discord and ask questions more directly, have a conversation about them, or just shitpost with us. Start streaming on Twitch, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 7 p.m. EST till 10, 11-ish p.m. EST. Play some games, have a good time, come by, support, all that. If you managed to make it all this way through the video and somehow still enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe for more content of middling quality in the future, and I hope you found the video helpful.